Latvia is sending Samanta Tina to Eurovision 2021 with The Moon is Rising. But are we dancing in the moonlight, or is Samantha turned us into werewolves? Maybe, I don't know. So Samanta Tina is representing Latvia this year. She's tried quite a few times to represent Latvia. Eventually, she did win the ticket last year at her 7th attempt, only for Eurovision to get cancelled, poor thing. Quite coincidentally, though, the song was called Still Breathing. And if you think that was in the year of COVID, perhaps not the best name for a song in that year, not ideal. But she's back this year with The Moon is Rising. Latvia's history, they started off very, very well. They won one of their first ever attempts back in 2002. It's widely considered one of the worst winners ever, but there's a striptease in it, so there's that.
I wanna be the light from shooting stars. I wanna be the queen in your sweet lights. I wanna be the last spark in your eyes.
Skip forward a few years and they made the final again with some pirates. And then in the 2010s, they've had a fair amount of success with songs written by Aminata Savadogo. She represented Latvia in 2015 with a song that's perhaps got the worst title of all time, the wretch-inducing Love Injected.
Love injected.
And Aminata is back songwriting this entry. This Moon is Rising is the song. It's by Samanta Tina and it's representing Latvia. Here is a little snippet.
The blood, moon is rising. Get ready for
So what do we think of this one then? Emily, we'll go to you first.
I'll be honest, I'm not a big fan of this one, and I can't exactly kind of place why. It seems to have kind of the general ingredients of a Eurovision entry that I like. You know, it's strong, it's powerful. The music video is kind of fierce and feminine. But for me, I'm just not a fan. And I think the issue I have with it is the first time I listened to it, because it starts with such a kind of bold singing, where it's almost kind of a cappella, and she just comes in. For me, that kind of either probably makes or breaks the song for you. For me, it kind of broke it. I'm kind of towards the end as well, around the kind of 2-minute mark, it kind of gets really chanty, which I'm just kind of not particularly keen on. Yeah, for me, it's just kind of a bit of a mismatch. I can't even place particularly why I don't like it. Like I don't have a reason. It's just not my cup of tea, essentially, which is a very boring analysis. But yeah.
No, fair enough. Songs aren't always everyone's cup of tea. And I think the beginning that you're on about is where she goes, oh, 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 whatever it is. It's like really, it's a bizarre intro. I do get what you mean. So not really a massive fan there. Let's head over to James. What do you think?
Hello. So yeah, I think Latvia is one of those ones where I love the music video, but the actual live translation, the live performance of it, I think was terrible. I mean, I think, right, going by the music video, fabulous look, the look of Beyonce, the vocals of Jessie J, mixed with a bit of a Cardi B breakdown in the song, the full works, like, you name it, she had it. I loved it. All while she was doing this sort of voguing and it felt like a strong female power ballad song. I loved it. But, she did the live version of it, and it had a whole different feel for me. And this is one of those ones, we've been saying this all along, how much of an impact these things can have dependent on what it's like live compared to the music video, etc., etc. And this was just a letdown for me. I've got to be honest. I think it's such a good song. And you listen to the music video version and the Spotify version as well, really good. The live version I've seen so far, I just don't like it. And that's really disappointing more than anything, because I honestly, I loved it. And then I was sort of thinking, oh, well, this is totally different. It's like, like when you go to the shop and you think, oh, I'm going to buy this new foot bath. And you think, oh, this is going to be fabulous. And then you get home and actually it's like, about as powerful as electric toothbrush and a bowl of water. It's no good. And that's what it feels like for me. It's just a bit of a letdown, to be honest with you.
I think it's decent, and I do, when it's on, I do enjoy it and I listen to it and I don't skip it. But I do get why it's quite divisive, and I think that is her style of music. I think her 2020 entry was even more divisive because the dance bit in the chorus had no conceivable rhythm to it. It was quite frantic and it was a bit all over the place, but it was frantic in quite a fun way. And I think this is also quite fun, but she's made it a little bit more, well, it's still quite frantic, but it's not quite as random frantic, if that makes sense. It's just, there's a lot happening and it's very, very intense. But I actually quite like it. And it's the beginning is very, very interesting. And then it sort of becomes, and she can sing, I mean, she can obviously sing, but it's got this kind of, Beyonce-like quality to it. I mean, she obviously, as a performer, is nothing like Beyonce, but you could put Beyonce's vocals on this and it would not sound out of place on one of her more recent albums. And I think that is it's a testament to how good the song is. I'm normally not a fan of songs by Aminata Savadogo, but I think this is a pretty solid one. And her songs normally do qualify. We'll get on to qualification in a second, but I think this is a pretty solid effort, and it's a good follow-up as well that I think is a bit more normal than her one last year. So yeah, it's an interesting one. Plus the little bit of Spanish guitar in there is what is quite appreciated, because I know I like a little bit of Spanish flair and stuff like that. So it's an interesting one.
Sorry to butt in. For me, that just kind of felt a bit out of place, the kind of almost like flamenco element, because the rest of the song is so kind of like almost kind of Beyonce. I kind of heard the guitar and it kind of threw me off slightly, but I guess that is kind of the more kind of chaotic nature of the song, really.
I think maybe what they're trying to do is they're almost inspired by Azerbaijan 2019, which was quite it's not very Azeri generally. It's not traditional instruments in there. It's quite Western in its drop and its chorus and stuff. But in the beginning in particular, there is a sort of flamenco inspiredness to it. That I think is subtle in there. There's less of it here, but in the Azeri song from a few years ago, it was quite a lot more subtle. So maybe they're trying to do a similar sort of thing, where they're trying to get the little inflections of Spanish music into there. But I think it complements it rather than detracts. But obviously, you disagree. Fair enough. Yeah. She nods, she disagrees. So that was our first comments. Let's go back around and see where we think it will sit in our ranking and whether we think it'll qualify. Latvia is performing 15th in the second semi-final. They're going immediately after Finland, that very loud rock metal entry, and immediately before one of the favourites to win the whole competition, Switzerland. So it's a pretty tough running order draw for this one. Do we think it'll qualify though? Emily, you first.
Yeah, for me, I think normally if it had kind of been placed elsewhere in the running order, I'd have said, yeah, I'll probably qualify, even though it's kind of not. If it was me personally, it wouldn't qualify, but that's just my opinion. But I think where it's kind of placed is quite awkward, because it kind of, it's a very, I see what the kind of producers have done in the running order, where it's kind of the peak of Finland and then they're trying to slowly bring it down to Switzerland, but I'm not sure it'll kind of sit that well in the running order. But I do think it'll qualify. I think, like we've kind of said before, the semi-final, this one is not particularly strong, and there probably are kind of 7 songs worse than it. But just based on kind of personal preference, is my number 30. So kind of quite low down, but yeah.
Well, down to number 30 there. James, how about you?
So in terms of my scoring, I mean, you might think, well, he's going to score it really bad. Actually, I gave it, I think, a fairly generous number 19. It's within my top 20. Again, I mean, at the time, I think I was heavily influenced by the performance of the video. But so many of the other acts translate very well from video to stage, and you kind of know where you're going. I think we think back to Conchita Wurst, one of my favorites, Rise Like a Phoenix, and she did rise like a phoenix. Comparing the music video to the performance, it had this whole other element. I hope that this is what happens, perhaps if they go through okay, and on the night, maybe they could pull out the back and do something completely different with it, and bring it back to the essence that I really want in the music video. But we'll have to wait and see, I guess. And I just say fingers crossed, because I think it's got potential to be amazing, and I don't want to get bored in it.
Yeah, so I'm around the same level. Mine, I've put it down as number 18, so it is definitely just into the top half of my rankings for the year. I think it's a solid one. I enjoy it. I would like to see it in the final. I think the final will be better for it. However, that point that we've made about the running order, I think it's going to, unfortunately, be its downfall, because Finland is just pure noise. And it comes after a run of really slow songs. So Finland is really going to stand out, and it's going to be the energy. And then it's hard to match that. It's not contrasting enough to be decisively different. If they put Switzerland after Finland, I think that would have been, they both would have stood out. But as you say, this is like on the gradient down to Switzerland. So it's not quiet, but it's not going to match the energy. So it sits in this really awkward position where it's not, I don't think it's going to stand out particularly. So I worry that it's not going to qualify, actually. I would like it to, but I'm skeptical about its chances. And it's strange because, as we said all the time, this is not a great semi-final. Last year, this semi-final, the second semi-final, it was the same combination of countries. Last year, it wasn't a great second semi either. But I think last year, she would have qualified, partly because she was last in the semi. It was not as good a song, but I think it probably would have qualified. This year, I'm concerned, because countries that weren't great last year have brought it this year in comparison. It's still not a great semi, but it's a slightly tougher field. And I think this was going to have a bit of a harder time anyway, but the running order really doesn't help it. So yeah, I hope it goes through. Not too sure it will, sadly. So that was what we thought. If we add our rankings together, that gives us a total of 67 for Latvia. So it's not great. It could be worse, but it's not great. 67 is where we've put that. If you agree with us, disagree with us, do let us know in the comments. Give us a like, dislike. I mean, dislike if you want. Ideally not, but go for it if you want, whatever. And also subscribe as well. And if you do subscribe, hit the bell notification so you get notified every time we upload a new episode. We're coming towards the end of our reviews. There's not very many left, but do keep an eye out for added content after we finish our reviews in the run-up to Eurovision week and night itself. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.